going above and beyond the call of duty, going the extra mile for us. We thank you for it, and welcome to Lakewood.
Mayor Miller, thank you very much. It is great to be with you again. Good to see so many good friends, including Bob Singer, who we work so closely on the state level and with the federal level, and of course with the municipality. Thank you for your work here. Just so many good things happen because of a well-run government. And so, Mayor Miller, thank you for that. And we all saw how everyone came together when Aaron went missing, Aaron Sofer, and you know, it was like you rarely see that kind of instantaneous mobilization on behalf of someone who sadly passed away, but at that point was missing. So that's a direct tribute to the community, but also to the leadership. So thank you for all of that. It is great to be here back in Lakewood and to join you here at the club. I am running for re-election. It's my 19th race for Congress. As many times as I've run, it always feels brand new. It's almost like the beginning of a school year. You know, when you're in grammar school, you smelt the crayons. You had that sense. I get rejuvenated, and I know Bob has that same feeling, and I'm sure many of you do as well. That you know the challenges are so great that it's a privilege to be a candidate, to run with a good team, and to hopefully get reelected. And it does look good, but nothing is ever a given. We all saw with our majority leader, who had a very big and rude surprise when he lost. Eric Cantor was an excellent majority leader and would have been speaker someday, and was upset in a primary. So no one can ever take any of these jobs for granted. You got to earn every vote, and I do try. I am running on a platform of I hope people will recognize this accomplishment. You know, the issues are big, but I do work on a lot of laws. I write a lot of laws. I'm fourth in the entire U.S. House of Representatives over the last several decades, all combined in actually turning bills into law. And the two most recent was the Sean and David Goldman International Child Abduction and Prevention and Return Act, which took all of the lessons learned working on David Goldman's epic battle to reclaim his son who was kidnapped to Brazil. 5 years. I was involved in the final year when not much was being done on the congressional level on his behalf, and mobilized Congress, and he did get his son back, and they're doing extraordinarily well. But I learned that the State Department, well-meaning, did welfare and whereabouts real good, and you know, they did that part of it. But when it came to policy, there wasn't a whole lot going on to do a government to government. And that's what the new law will do. I used as a template a law that I wrote in the year 2000 called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. It is our landmark law in combating modern-day slavery, sex and labor trafficking. Used the idea of holding countries to account and imposing sanctions if they fail and show a pattern of non-cooperation on child abduction cases. And so took the whole idea of the TPVA, the trafficking law, and applied it to child abduction. It was signed into law on August 7th, and now it's a matter of faithfully implementing it, and I'm hoping that the Office of Children's Issues at state and our ambassadors abroad take seriously the mandate they've been given by Congress. Another law that just got signed in August was the autism law, providing $1.3 billion for autism research services. I frankly actually got the idea for the original law, which passed in 2000, from two people in Brick Township, Bobby and Billy Gallagher. They thought there was a prevalent spike of autism in Brick. I went and met with them. We spent 3 hours in our first meeting. They had stacks of research that they had done suggesting a prevalent spike in Brick. So I brought the CDC up to Brick. They did a study and found out that from their data calls to surrounding municipalities that there was an elevated number of autism cases there too. So I wrote a law that created centers of excellence at CDC, NIH. That is now the law that we just reauthorized for 5 years. And one of the biggest changes I put into the law is the whole idea of aging out. We're finding, and you see it too, I'm sure, that large numbers of children are becoming majority age every year that are on the autism spectrum. The estimates are 50,000 a year. And we're not ready from an employment point of view, all kinds of services, educational or housing, to meet that huge spike in demand. And for the parents who are as heroic as it gets. I mean, I'm speaking at the autism conference on Friday in Atlantic City, and I can tell you, having met with so many autism parents of autistic children, the patience, the love, the devotion, the commitment, time, and every other way that they make to their kids is heroic. And yet, now they're getting a little more gray. Their children are in their 20s. Some will be soon in their 30s. Some already are. And they don't know what they're going to do. Well, we need to step into that breach, and we need to find solutions. And the new bill, the new law, has two ways of trying to establish a blueprint for action. One is with the General Accountability Office, a study by them, and the other is by all of the agencies of the U.S. government to figure out, do a total inventory, what's out there, what are we doing, try to come up with best practices, and then replicate, and expand. So, you know, there will be a new bill soon as we get the data back from that aging out two studies that are underway now. There are big issues that I frankly think the President has not done enough on. We have a deadline coming up on November 24th vis-a-vis Iran. They already got one delay, which I thought was awful. We should have said, you know, a deadline is a deadline. Okay, this is the second deadline, and Iran is already gaming the system. And the foreign minister, I think, is on their side, is very much convinced that they will have a major victory that will allow them to keep the centrifuges going as they careen towards becoming a nuclear state with the capability of nuclear bombs. And we're all too willing, I think, to cut a deal. And I think that's a major mistake. On November 25th, the day after the deadline, if they haven't you know, made a major concession, we ought to snap back right to our sanctions. And they are strong sanctions. But I'm very worried that that's not going to happen. And I read the Jerusalem Post every day, the People's Daily every day. I read the online versions, and a couple of internationals that I read, periodicals and newspapers, I should say, every day. The concern in Israel is huge. Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that you know, we're preoccupied with ISIS, and I'm not sure, and we missed that one too. That was a few years late in coming, now we have a situation where that's festering out of control, and Iran is on the threshold. We don't know when, but I mean, anyone who thinks that with a straight face their nuclear program is for domestic energy consumption, I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, it's just, it's you know, people are not naive. We know why they're building this and why they're testing missiles, including ICBMs. You know, they want to project that power, and they want to be a nuclear state, and don't count on any responsibility or restraint if they were to acquire it. So that's a huge deadline coming up on the 24th. Finally, domestically, one of the biggest issues that we're facing, and Obama has delayed, and I think illegally delayed, one timetable after, one mandate after another as part of his Obamacare, so-called Affordability Act. And let's not forget, that passed, and didn't take effect for 4 years later. And that was so they could get a better number to market and say how cheap it would be, how it was not costing the taxpayers the amount. They were getting revenues in for 4 years without any kind of expenditures on the outgo to speak of. Now that it's hitting, you should see my mail and the number of people who last year who got the letters who said, oh, your insurance plan is infirm, you have to get a new one, and businesses that were told you need to pony up more money. Well, the New York Times had a piece just a few days ago that talked about how the larger companies are now going with higher deductible plans. You know, that are pricing, you know, people are saying, I'm not even going to go to the doctor, or if I do, I'm paying $6,000 or $1,000 or more upfront costs right out of my pocket before any of my insurance, even the co-payments kick in, and they have gone up as well in terms of the co-payments. This is one of the worst laws that has ever been conceived. Its consequences were not debated. Hearings were not held on sections. You know, when I write a law, we don't just bring it to the floor. We don't write it in the back room somewhere. We have hearings on it. We go through what the text says and what the possible consequences are and hear from all sides to get a sense of, so we legislate with our eyes completely open. That didn't happen with Obamacare. It was rammed through in a total partisan manner, and there could have been bipartisanship on reform. That wasn't it, and now we have a situation where it is a parade of horribles that just keeps getting worse. The fact that the sign-up time is not October 15th for this next open season, that was delayed by Obama to November 15th. Wonder why? Right after the election. You know, all of these deadlines just keep getting pushed, you know, past the next election that they hope to win. I thought it was about affordable care. I thought, and it's so ill-named. It's not Affordable Care. It's the Unaffordable Care Act. And the more people learn about it, the more of a disaster and a train wreck that they see it is. We have voted to repeal it on the House Republican side. You know, conclude with this because I don't go to the late. More times, dozens of times, in whole or in part, and the Senate never takes up the bills. And I'll finish on that matter. The Senate, people say that the Congress is dysfunctional, that it's the do-nothing Congress. Well, I'm working hard. I'm getting some bills passed into law. But I have 5 bills pending on the House-Senate side that passed in the House. One of them had to do with Hurricane Sandy. It was a bipartisan bill. I was the prime sponsor of it. It said that synagogues, churches, any kind of house of worship that was destroyed in whole or in part by Sandy is eligible for FEMA funding. And there's nothing in the underlying law, it's called the Stafford Act, that precludes this. It's all administrative exclusion. And so we got the bill passed. It passed 252 to 74. Went over to the Senate. It's a dead letter. We can't get it out of the Senate. The administration opposed it. The FEMA director opposed it. They put out talking points against it when it came up on the floor. And we won the debate hands down. Over 300, I think it's more like 380, I don't know the exact number, House Republican bills, job-creating bills, bills to abolish Obamacare, which they may not want to take up, languish over on the Senate side and never even get a vote. I have one bill that I've worked on for 7 years, twice passed by the House. I'm the prime sponsor of it. Thought of the idea, called the International Megan's Law. And Megan Kanka, that precious little girl, 7-year-old, who was murdered by a pedophile who lived across the street. You know, we have Megan's Law in the entire country. Well, one of the dirty little secrets is that 4,500 convicted pedophiles get a passport every year, hop on planes and go and they abuse little kids overseas. 4,500. And, you know, those passports, as we all know, are good for 10 years. So, you know, they fan out. This legislation would say, under penalty of severe prison time, you must notify the State Department before you travel, and when you do, we notify the country of destination so they can either deny a visa to you or watch you like a hawk to break up this pedophile sex tourism that's happening right in plain sight of day. It also would seek to get a reciprocity, create Megan's laws all over Europe, all over the world, that look just like ours, so we know when they're coming here to abuse our children, because it's going on, it is growing in its numbers, and we need that passed overwhelmingly in the House, sits over on the Senate side for now a year. I can't even get a vote on it. So if we take the Senate, there are a lot of pent-up legislative initiatives by my colleagues on the House side, including International Megan's Law, that we will be standing in the queue to get passed again, and hopefully the Senate will take it up and then maybe they get vetoed, but then we have 2016 to work on that one. Thank you so much for all your support. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Congressman. Much appreciated. I actually have a quick Lakewood question for you. In Hurricane Sandy, the amount of damage that was caused to Lakewood Township was about $3 million, and the 10% tab on that is obviously about $300,000. The county loaned us the money for the $300,000 while we were waiting for FEMA to send us the money. To date, we've only seen about $160,000 from FEMA, and we are just waiting anxiously. We can't get to first base with FEMA to see the rest of the money that's owed to the town.
We'll get on it right away.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now back to the President. Would you like to...